Well, hello, everyone. I'm Janet B. I've recovered from compulsive eating and bulimia. It is really nice to be with you all tonight. And we are going to be studying the family afterwards. So if you have your big book, we're going to start on page 122. What a great title, right? The family afterward. It means there is an afterward, right? There is a recovery. And then it's like I always say, removing the food obsession is just God's opening act. Then what else does he do? He restores families. So, and our step 12, remember, says having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps, like a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening where we're changed, where God rearranges us, right? Removes the food obsession. It says, then what do? We try to carry this message of the 12 steps to other compulsive eaters and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This chapter is going to give us some good guidance on how we can practice these spiritual principles in all our affairs. So it starts out by saying, okay, there's a couple of attitudes someone may take with a recovering husband. Either wrap him in cotton wool or place him on a pedestal, right? And we have to be careful. We're not supposed to treat people those ways. We're not supposed to wrap them in cotton wool, which means I think we've all had people in our lives where we've had to walk on eggshells around them because we're afraid if we don't, what will happen. We're not supposed to do that. And we're not supposed to go out of our way to protect other people. Um, and we don't place people on a pedestal. We don't make idols out of anybody. And it says for successful readjustment in a family, everyone has to meet on the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. Tolerance, that means I need to put up with my husband's shortcomings. I don't have to demand that he put up with mine, right? I have to put up with his. I'm very fortunate. He does put up with my many flaws, but that's not what this program says, that I have to make my husband tolerate me. And also understanding and love, right? We'll talk about it again. We've talked about it before. The elements of love, loyalty. We don't go bad mouthing people, self sacrifice, and forgiveness. And it says this involves a process of deflation. What kind of deflation? Ego deflation. It is not fun. And it says, what's the problem? We're likely to have fixed ideas about the family attitude, interested in having our own wishes, right? By the word wishes, I wrote the word demands, respected. And the more one member of the family demands the others do his will, the more resentful they become. And I have a perfect example that took place right on my dining room table tonight. So my son is about to graduate from college, and my husband co-signed his lease for his apartment. And I said to my husband, we're not co-signing a lease once he graduates. He's on his own. He's not good with money. I don't want to be stuck paying his lease if he doesn't get a job. And my husband said, okay, I hear you, but you know, how is he able to get the credit when he first starts? And I was getting all riled up, and I usually don't get riled up over things. So I had to ask myself, okay, what's going on? And then as I read this chapter, I thought I had a demand that my husband see things the way that I do. So what happened? I ended up saying, well, okay, if we're going to do this, then Daniel needs to do these two things. So it's like we conceded, we compromised. I would prefer not to have our name on the lease at all. My husband is maybe more generous of spirit than I am and is willing to do it. So we compromise. But I saw what was the problem. I wanted my will done. And when I read this as I was prepping tonight, I said, you know what? Push comes to shove is more important for me to keep my serenity, which means that may mean me telling my husband, you know what? You do what you think is best. And even if we end up paying some money because he can't pay the bills, at least we won't fight. I'll have serenity. Um, so I find that like my problems come when I have a demand that people see things the way that I see things. And they don't have to. My husband has every right to see things from a different perspective. And it tells us what's the problem. We're trying to play the lead, arrange the family show, trying to see what we could take rather than give. Okay, so if I think of my situation, is it really I'm trying to take rather than give? Well, yeah, I'm saying like my peace of mind at the expense of helping out my son when he made it through 4 years of college. He's gonna get a job. Uh, maybe I was looking for not so much to give, but to get. And so that has to change. And it's interesting, it says, is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family life? Well, am I responsible for my unconscious? They're saying, yeah, I need to dig deep. I can't just say, well, this is how I feel. I have to start and say, okay, wait, why do I feel like this? What's my selfishness? What's my resentment? What's my fear? We need to go deep. And then a beautiful line: cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. Guys, you know what that's saying? That when God removes the food obsession, that's just like the first thing he's going to do. He's going to help us in our family relationships. He's going to help us in like highly strained abnormal conditions. Like this isn't a God who's like a one-trick pony. He's here for the long haul. So page 123, it says, okay, there's alluring shortcuts and bypaths down which we may wander and lose our way, right? The bypath of selfishness, of, me playing God. And they're saying, we're going to tell you some obstacles that families meet and how we can avoid them and even turn them to good. And then they say today's life is measured against that of other years, right? They remember when father was doing well. And when it falls short, the family may be unhappy. Do we measure our lives by what they used to be? I think more we measure them by other people's lives. How come other people's husbands do or don't do XYZ? How come other people's kids don't do the bad things my kids do or do the good things that my kids don't do? We compare ourselves to others and our family to others. And we have to stop that. We just have to stop it. What's the antidote? Gratitude. Gratitude. My husband said to me tonight, he said, our son is graduating from college and he did it in 4 years. Did we really think he would do that? And the answer is like, yeah, no, there were some doubts he could do it. So to look at the positive. So it says, okay, the family demands that dad makes things good again. And look at what it says. God, they believe, they're talking about the family, almost owes this recompense on a long overdue account. It's like, okay, my husband's been drinking so long. Now he's not. God, you owe it to me to have a perfect family life. Okay, how much do we do that? God, you owe it to me to, find me the perfect husband, to have kids who treat me well in my old age. You owe me good health. You owe me, the right job. You owe me warm weather. God owes us nothing. And when we realize that, everything is a gift. And some of you know, I had something, maybe it was about 6 months, 8 months ago. I had a health scare where I thought, I might have this condition that no matter what I do, I've got it. And I was like, at first it's like, well, it's not fair. But then I quickly said, no, no, no. I am not guaranteed good health. That's not a guarantee that God's going to give me perfect health. And everything is a gift. And then life is just so much easier. Okay. So it says the head of the house, meaning the recovered alcoholic, has spent years pulling down the structures: business, romance, friendship, health. These things are ruined, damaged. It takes years to fix this. This is a process, not an event. Even in our own lives, it's a process. We're not all going to be, or any of us going to be Mother Teresa overnight. That's just not going to happen. Um, and it says about the husband, he shouldn't be reproached if he never makes much money again. It says the wise family will admire him for what he is trying to be rather than what he's trying to get. I think God's more concerned with what we're trying to be than what we're trying to get. More concerned with our character than anything else. And then they go ahead and they talk about the past, right? That the alcoholic, or even us, the compulsive eaters, have done some like pretty shameful stuff. And they say, okay, if we say, yep, that's all in the past, let's lock it in the closet, throw away the key, and never talk about it again. They say that is self-centered. We can't do that. We have to talk about it again. And we'll see why. And they quote Henry Ford, who said, experience is the thing of supreme value in life. And they say, no, maybe. That's only true if we're willing to turn the past to good account. And then it tells us how we grow. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. So I have another example today. Today was just a day full of me just getting my spiritual butt kicked. So, end of my day, actually, I finished working, I was getting my nails done, and I see an email on my phone from my boss. This number was $43,000 off, and the CEO was asking why. I'm like, oh my God. And I come home and I think about it, and it's like, it's a totally my mistake. I didn't update the projection. So I said to my boss, I'm like, did you tell me to do that? He said, no. I'm like, totally my fault. I didn't update it. I'm really sorry. Um, and how do we grow then? Well, and I have a note in my book, pride. Like it's really kind of humbling to have to say, like I screwed up. I'm supposed to be this like financial whiz, and I just like totally messed it up. And the mistake was like carried through for months, and I didn't catch it. And it's like, I'm sorry. But how am I going to grow? Because you better believe when I'm calculating commissions next time, I am going to double check my work and not assume I have it. Um, and did I grow spiritually by having to admit, you know what, it's totally my fault? Maybe, hope so. Um, so we have to really face our errors, not make excuses for them. That's how we stay in everlasting non-growth, by always looking to blame something or someone else. And then they say, like, okay, about our painful past, it's of infinite value to other families. And we think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not. And I thought that was a really interesting word they use. Oh, like I owe strangers something. But yeah, I do, because God gave me the gift of recovery so that when someone is struggling, I can help that person. Yeah, I owe it. So it's like God says, okay, you don't have to pay me back. I don't even know what it would cost, right? Let's say $100,000 for God's treatment. It's like He says, you don't have to pay me back, but go pay back some of my other kids who are struggling with the same thing. Pay it forward. So I owe, and it's okay. And then they tell us showing others who suffer how we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. So true. Helping others is like a game changer. I was supposed to talk here last week. I wasn't feeling well, so Melissa did the talk. I usually do a talk to my sponsees on Thursday night. I said, I'm just going to go to a meeting and sit and listen instead. Boy, by the end of the week, I felt it. I felt the lack of like trying to help people. I just felt off. So that's when I say, like, when I say I am so glad to be here, I am really so glad. They say, cling to the thought in God's hands. The dark past is the greatest possession you have. I mean, I did some really slimy things, like I faked a rape. Well, that is not a great possession to me, right? It's something I'm ashamed of. But in God's hands, it's useful because I was talking about it on a meeting and I got a sponsee and she said to me, I faked a rape also. In God's hands, my dark past can be useful. And then it starts giving us some advice, spiritual principles to talk about. And it also tells us some miracles in this program. So we're going to look for spiritual principles and miracles. So bottom of page 124, it says, basically, let the past stay in the past. If someone has made their amends to you, don't bring it up later. That's unkind. And it says that often people forgive themselves, forgive each other, and the miracle of reconciliation is at hand. First miracle here, miracle of reconciliation. People who have strained family relationships, these relationships get healed. Okay. And it says, page 125, if we don't do this, like husbands and wives sometimes separate for a time until new perspective, new victory over hurt pride could be re-won. That's pretty interesting, re-won. It means that there's some spiritual battles I'm going to have to just fight more than once. I'm going to fall, I have to get up, I'm going to fall and get up. We have to keep fighting. And, they say, so unless a good and useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. So I think it's something that I need to think about. Do I bring up things in the past? When someone does something that annoys or angers me, and they're telling us, don't do it. Next principle on this page, it says, we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. I can tell you that I faked a rape, but I will never tell you the name of my sponsee who did the same thing, or the details. That's her story to tell. Even if I think it would help someone, that's her story to tell. And then a principle I think we all could benefit from. We alcoholics, we compulsive eaters are sensitive people. Now, when it says we are sensitive people, it does not mean that we like poetry and sunsets. It means that we get ruffled easily, that we get annoyed easily, that someone says something and our feelings get hurt super easily. It says we're sensitive people. Read that, we are prideful people. It says it takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. We don't want to be people who are easily ruffled. And I can remember back to 5th grade, someone saying they didn't like what I was wearing, and I felt sick to my stomach. Now I will be at the OA birthday party, and Saturday night, everyone's going to be in their glitter and boas and whatever. And I'm going to be in like my Ann Taylor, thing with my white cowboy boots. And people may look at me like, oh gosh, and I could care less, right? We cannot be sensitive people. Okay. And then it talks about how the person generally runs in one of two directions. And this is something we can watch out for in ourselves, that we either try to make a lot of money because we were just like in the food and we couldn't before, or all we think about is God and we neglect our family obligations. I can fall into the second category. I can be like sponsoring and speaking at meetings and not empty the dishwasher. And I actually am so selfish and can be so selfish that part of my commitment on my nightly review is to, write if I did my cleaning commitment for the day, because we have to be balanced, and it tells us that we're often not. So what do we do if someone is, so what do we do? Page 127, it says, the family must realize that dad, or we could say about us, though marvelously improved, is still convalescing. That means we're not going to be perfect. We're still going to get resentments. We're still going to get fears. But let's not use that as an excuse to stay still. So here's an example. We should, the way we can tell if we're growing spiritually is if our bounce back period is decreasing. So let's say when I start out, it takes me 3 full days to resolve a resentment. The anger stays with me for 3 days. Well, as I start working this program, it should go to 2 days, to 1 day, to, 3 hours, to half an hour, until most resentments can be resolved in less than half an hour. If we are still seething with resentment, we need, and we're through the steps and it's like constant, we need to look and see, is there something we need to look at? Because even though we're convalescing, we should be healing. We should be going in the right direction. So it tells us, what do we do if people around us are like that? It says, be thankful. So practice gratitude. Let him praise his progress. I will say, if I could go back and have my kids little again, one thing I would do different is I would praise them way more. I mean, if you think about it, if there's a kid and you say, Johnny, you've got such a great posture, you better believe Johnny's going to start sitting up straighter. Right? So we want to praise. We want to praise our husbands. We want to praise our kids. Not lying. I mean, that's just wrong. But everyone's got something good about them. And so we want to praise them. And then it tells us like a great spiritual principle, how to make crankiness, depression, and apathy disappear in another person, like a vanishing act. So it says, these things, crankiness, depression, and apathy, will disappear when there's tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. Now, notice first, it doesn't say abuse will disappear. So I'm not telling anyone who's being abused to just sit there and take it and be like all kumbaya. That's not what this is saying. It's saying cranky, depressed, apathetic, right? And so what do we practice? Tolerance. What does tolerance mean? My threshold to withstand pain or discomfort is raised. Love, loyalty, self-sacrifice, and forgiveness, and spiritual understanding. Try and put myself in the other person's shoes. And then they talk about money again, and they tell us another principle for us. So they're saying for addicts like us, don't know about the rest of the world, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded, it never came first. And so I was pondering that, like, well, why? Why does God make it that way? And I think God doesn't want us to forget him. And getting too much money too fast would probably tend to make people forget him. So God is more concerned with our spiritual progress than our material well-being. Then it tells us the home has suffered more than anything else, so it's well to exert ourselves there. He is not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof, meaning not likely to stop eating compulsively if we fail to show unselfishness and love under our own roof. So I could have the tightest food plan, make a million phone calls a day, go to, a meeting a day, all this stuff. But if I'm being selfish and unkind in my house, nope, I'm not going to stop eating compulsively, likely. I mean, right? It may, but they're telling us no, we're not likely to get far in any direction if we fail to show unselfishness and love in our own house. And it says, yeah, maybe your family's difficult, but didn't you contribute to making them that way? Didn't I contribute to making my kids difficult, right? By all the times I was like impatient and unloving when they were little, maybe that contributed to any problems they have now. And by the way, I have good kids. I have good, so I don't want to make it sound like they're terrible. Sometimes when you use examples, people might say, oh my gosh, you have like the worst husband and the worst kids in the world. I have a great husband and I have great kids. Just FYI. Okay, bottom of page 127, it tells us we're supposed to begin to see our own shortcomings and admit them to the other people. And that lays a basis for a helpful discussion. I generally encourage people, once they've finished the steps and made their amends to their husband, to have a weekly sit down, to pick a night a week where you can just talk about stuff going on so stuff doesn't build up. But it tells us what we have to avoid in these talks. Heated argument. I mean, we can disagree, that's fine. Self-pity. No self-pity. Self-pity is the opposite of gratitude. No self-justification. That means, looking for rationalizing for why I did something that's wrong. Or resentful criticism. So those are the things it tells us we have to avoid. And page 128 gives us a principle. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. So isn't that something great that we can practice? We could go to our jobs, to, I don't know, or if we're the PTA mother for our kids' school, no matter what we do, giving rather than getting is our guiding principle. And I think that's kind of a theme of this book, giving rather than getting, a guiding principle. So, okay, then they say, well, what happens if instead of a husband, father who's like all money, 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 he's all God, 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 and like doesn't have time to take out the trash? And they're saying, okay, the family may react pretty badly. They may even be jealous of a God who stole dad's affections. And they're grateful he drinks no more, it says, but they may not like the idea that God has accomplished the miracle where they failed. Okay, second miracle, the miracle of recovery. It says, they often forget Father was beyond human aid. They don't see why their love and devotion didn't straighten him out. What's the strongest force in this world, right? This human world? Love. And if love can't do it, nothing on this human plane could do it. If love can't do it, then nothing except something not in this human plane. And that's God. That's God reaching down into our human existence and doing a miracle of transformation in our hearts. That's what recovery is. And then they say, okay, dad's just talking about God this, God that, God will take care of them. And they're saying, you know what? He's really not that unbalanced. And they say it's like this joy he has after this relief from alcoholism. And page 129, Father feels he has struck something better than gold. So this like good, I wish I was an artist because this would be such a good visual, right? He may try to hug the new treasure to himself. So you imagine someone hugging like a bar of gold to himself. It says, he may not see at once. He has barely scratched a limitless load that will pay dividends only if he mines it for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire product. So you think of this like whole room full of gold and then like a whole down the block, like all full of gold that how does he mine it, right? Prayer, meditation, self-sacrifice for others, and then giving it away. It's like the more he gives away, the more gold just keeps appearing. But if we hug it to ourselves, it just oh, there was a song like that, right? The Magic Penny, right? Hold it close and you don't have any. Melissa, you must know this. This is like a second, you don't, wait. No one knows the song about the magic penny? Love, it's love. It's just like a magic penny. Hold it close and you don't have any. Lend it, spend it. You'll have so many, they'll roll all over the floor. So that's what they're talking about. Goal, like a limitless load, like limit. And I think the limitless load they're talking about is God, like God's power, God's love. We just keep getting more of it. And then as we give it away, like we get even more. So it's like we get more from giving it away than just sitting and reading about it. So, but then they say, okay, Dad, So if you've got a spiritual life that doesn't include your family obligations, so basically they're telling the family, let him go all, God, God, God for a while. It's okay. He'll kind of come back to earth. And then they tell the father a spiritual life which doesn't include his family obligations really isn't perfect. So he's got to pay attention to his family. But he has to help others. And on the bottom of page 129, it says during the first days of convalescence, helping other alcoholics will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. Okay, what if we're brand new and, like still in the food or 3 days out from the food, and obviously we can't 12 step someone. What do? We do everything we can to be of help to other people. We try to be of use. If there's in-person meetings, we can be the ones giving people rides to meetings. We can do that, right? We can set up the coffee, set up the chairs at meetings. If we're only on Zoom meetings, then we find other people to help. I had a sponsee for a short time. She lived in Brooklyn and she was cleaning the streets in Brooklyn, one street at a time. She would go out with her gloves, and I did not tell her she had to do this. But this is what she came up with to be unselfish, to just like pick up trash off the streets. Um, I've had people go to Target and fold clothes. People go to the gym and wipe down racks of machines. Things that are a self-sacrifice. For me, cleaning out the refrigerator in my house is a self-sacrifice. So we do that, and that's how we grow. Um, Page 130, it talks about those of us who spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. So this is like in addition to God removing the food obsession, he gives us this great sense of purpose. I don't know if any of y'all are like I used to be. It's like, why am I here? What's my purpose? What I would like ponder, why am I here? What's my purpose? It tells us we get a great sense of purpose and a growing consciousness. So it just keeps growing about the power of God, not just the power of God, like, I don't know, in Ethiopia or something, in my life. God is active in our lives. And then it tells us, and I try to remember this, God would like us to keep our head in the clouds with him, so thinking about him, but our feet firmly planted on earth. That's where our fellow travelers are, and that's where our work must be done. And it's work. Melissa said at the beginning that, like, we believe God launches search and rescue missions for other addicts. But he needs us to, I guess he doesn't need us. He could do it all by himself. He chooses to allow us the privilege of working with him to help other people, right? Like, what a great thing. And then they say oh, on page 130, nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. So if no one in the house is on a spiritual path, that's okay. We don't have to talk to them about it. We practice spiritual principles, tolerance. We don't get ruffled at, any little thing they say. Self-sacrifice, love, spiritual understanding, forgiveness when they mess up. And they say that will help people who are off kilter. Um, my son and daughter sometimes would fight a lot. And I told my daughter, I said, the next time he says something to you like, you did this wrong, just say, yeah, Daniel, I'm sorry. So he came in like, Lizzie, you did whatever it was. And she just said, Daniel, I'm sorry. And he just stopped and he's like, no, that's okay. And, sometimes we just have to like give a little and then the other person will. But it's our pride that stops us from like taking that first step. Um, Okay, page 131. At the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact each will have to yield here and there if the family is going to play an effective part in the new life. And it says that the husband, the father, will spend time helping other alcoholics, but this activity should be balanced. Okay, how do we balance that, right? What's the right balance? Well, and I think it's chapter 2, it says much of our spare time is spent on these activities. So spare time means time when I'm not doing things that I have to do, like going to work, or if I have young children, giving them a bath and making sure their homework's done and raising them. That's not spare time. Spare time is a time when, a slug like me would lie on the couch and read a book and watch a series and rinse, repeat over and over. That's my spare time. And if I'm reading as much as I want or watching as much Netflix as I want, then I'm out of balance and I'm not spending enough time helping others. And then it talks about religion or church membership. And it says, look, we're non-denominational people, so it is not obligatory. They say, but it's nice. And if you go somewhere, don't argue about religion. I will tell you, I have never found a church where I agree 100% with everything. That's okay. That's okay. I don't need to. Or been in a Bible study where I agree 100% with what's being taught. That's okay. I don't need to. And I don't need to argue. And I don't need to convince anyone that, I know better. But it tells us like getting involved in something like that, we make new friends and we're sure to find new avenues of usefulness and pleasure. Pleasure. I'm allowed to be happy. I'm allowed to do something just because it's fun. And when I get on a plane, not to the birthday party, but next month to Aruba. It is, I am not going there to help people. I am going to lie on a beach with a book, and that's okay. Now, if I did that 40 weeks a year, that would be a problem. 1 week a year, it's okay. We're allowed to have pleasure. We're supposed to enjoy life. In fact, the next paragraph says, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. We are not a glum lot. Newcomers, if they could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. If Melissa and I showed up here all like down in the dumps, like, yeah, we're working this program, but we're exhausted and we're miserable, who would want that? But like, we're not that we never have problems, but we're happy most of the time. We enjoy life and this is fun. So it says we insist on enjoying life. And here's a couple pointers. It says we don't indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations. So we don't get all cynical about like politics, world affairs, things like that. Well, leave that to people who aren't addicts. And we don't carry the world's trouble on our shoulders. We don't get bogged down with things like, to me, it's like human trafficking. Like that one guts me. But what am I going to do? Right? I pray, I give money, but I don't carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. And it says, those of us who try to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. We can't shoulder the entire burden of others, but we can shoulder some of the burden. I think when I have felt that like weighed down, it's because I've crossed the line into life coach and I'm trying to like solve their life problem. That's not my job. My job is to take a sponsee and help her put her hand in God's hand. That's it. I don't need to tell her what job she should take, if she should leave her husband. When I start, getting involved in that, I feel pressure. And no, I'm just supposed to put your hand in God's hand so you can go to God. And then I'm here to bounce ideas off, but bigger problems like how to raise your kids and how to save your marriage, we'll get to that on the next page. So page 133. It says, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Okay. So if anyone has trouble with God, that God's like this big ogre with a baseball bat waiting to get you 5 seconds after you die, which is how I used to think about him. Well, no, God wants us to be happy. You know, like I think happy means like good things are happening. We're happy, joyous. And I think that's a contentment even when circumstances are rough, and free of this obsession. That they say we are sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. It says we can't subscribe to the belief this life is a vale of tears. Okay, what does that mean? So a lot of us had or still have a belief that this life is a vale of tears. That means that it's normal to expect trouble and it's normal to expect the other shoe to fall. That if things are going great, it's like, well, this can't last. Okay, that's a belief, right? That this life is a vale of tears, the other shoe is going to fall. And they say, no, we don't subscribe to that. So I would say we can unsubscribe to that. We can unsubscribe to that belief. And I've actually had like sponsees who would write a letter like, to whom it may concern, I hereby unsubscribe to, the society that believes this life is a vale of tears and the other shoe is going to drop. I now subscribe to the society that whatever, that I'm supposed to be happy, joyous, and free, right? Unsubscribe from that belief that the other shoe is going to drop. It may never drop, right? And then we've just wasted all that time. And then they tell us, okay, what to do if it does drop. It says, well, we made our own misery. God didn't do it. So first, we don't blame God. Avoid the deliberate manufacture of misery. Being in the society of the other shoe is going to drop. That's the deliberate manufacture of misery. It says, but if trouble comes, notice it doesn't say when trouble comes, because maybe trouble won't come. But if it does, what do? Cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate God's omnipotence. Use it to show how God can keep a person tranquil, happy, even in the midst of hard circumstances. That's hard to resist, right? I mean, now, right? Like I'm all happy and bubbly, but truthfully, my life is like really good right now. There's very few problems in my life. But if, the other shoe did drop, and I'm not waiting for it, but it might, if it drops, and I'm still able to be happy, that's really a message to carry, right? So if trouble comes, yeah, you'll deal with it then. But until then, belong to the society of happy, joyous, and free. And then they talk about health. They say, third miracle, we are miracles of mental health and we've seen remarkable transformations in our body. So I would say fourth miracle, physical health. That's what comes. And it says, but we don't disregard human health measures, that there's plenty of fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners. And that's who, I would send someone to if they were having like a serious marriage problem, if they needed help with, raising their children, things like that. I might be able to give tips out of my experience, but for serious stuff, see someone else. And doctors, and I will tell you, we don't play doctor and we don't give medical advice. I have heard people being told, if you're really working this program, you don't need antidepressants. I'm not a doctor. I don't know that. I mean, there may be some, and I believe there are. I have a family member who needs an antidepressant to like not have suicidal thoughts. When they take the antidepressant, the suicidal thoughts come. Like, it is very arrogant to tell someone what they should or should not do about their medicine, and we don't do it. It's really, we don't tell people you should take this medicine, you shouldn't take that, you should. No, we don't get involved with that. And you know what? I will even go so far as to say we shouldn't tell people, well, if your doctor tells you to take this pill, but it has sugar in it, you shouldn't take it. Like, that's not my role. That's not my role. So I think we have to be really careful about that. And I'm so, I guess, passionate about that because I've literally heard people being like, well, my sponsor told me I shouldn't take this medication, that if I were really recovered, I wouldn't need that. And I will say that is just not true. I mean, there may be some people who go through the 12 steps and can stop taking something. I don't know. But if someone said to me, hey, I'm through the 12 steps, I don't think I need my antidepressant anymore, I say, go talk to your doctor. That is not my role. I have one role. That is to take my sponsee's hand and put it in the hand of God. That's it. That's my job when I sponsor. Okay, so page, oh my gosh, we're about done. So I'm going to just skip to the very end of page 135, where it talks about he was a recovered alcoholic, but his wife really nagged him about smoking and drinking coffee. Guys, like, let's not nag our husbands or kids about things that are not important. And it says he got drunk. And they say, but it was his fault. Our friend was wrong, dead wrong, right? If we eat compulsively, 100% of the time, it is our fault. It's not because someone nagged me, how someone treated me. Um, it is 100% my fault. And then they say we have three mottos which are apropos. Here's, by the way, here's a motto that is not apropos. Keep the memory green. If we had the power to keep the memory green, we wouldn't need a 12-step program. If you don't understand that, call me and I'll talk to you about it. First things first, deal with the alcohol or the food. Don't worry about the coffee or the smoking. That's really what they were saying. This line actually comes from a line out of the New Testament. Seek first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all other things will be added to you. Seek God first. Live and let live. I have to work this program. My husband doesn't. My kids don't. No one else does. And easy does it. Like, relax. If you're doing the work, the miracles will happen. And with that, I will pass.